So here we are at session 1 of Strategic Technology Planning with the Nonprofit Support Center of the Hartford Foundation. I just want to start by saying I know that this is a really crazy time for everyone. So as Amy said, thank you all for being here, for being flexible, and for making the time. But I also want to, on behalf of, I'm sure all of you, also say thank you to the Hartford Foundation. They're a rock in times like this. They're a rock all the time. But I know that they've been working around the clock to try to help you all navigate really uncertain times, to keep offering programs like this, you know, even as you're juggling things, to make this program and this grant opportunity available to you is really awesome. So thanks to the Hartford Foundation and the Nonprofit Support Program for having me and for having all of us and for continuing to do great things to support Hartford area nonprofits as we navigate this really uncertain time. Let's go ahead and dive into our session. So I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. Again, I showed you that raise your hand button at the bottom of the screen. So do me a favor now, and if you have been to this class before, please go ahead and raise your hand. Again, at the bottom of your screen, you should see a raise hand button. If you have taken this class before, you've participated in the Strategic Tech program before, let me see you raise your hand. So far, we've got 6 people. 9 people who have been here before. Is that all? Raise your hand if you've been in this program before. Okay, let's see. Karen has, Nicole, Arlene, Patty, Dina, or Dinah, I'm not sure how to pronounce, Christiana, Catherine. Okay, so it looks like maybe about 10 of you have been here before. So welcome back. I hope that you will share your feedback about what you've learned since the last time as we go. Oh, there's one more. Kim, thanks for letting me know that you've been here before. So even though you've been here before, I know for many of you, it's been at least 4 years, if not 5. And I think for one attendee, it might have been 9 years. And I don't know about you, but right now, February feels like it was 4 years ago. I'm guessing it's the same for you. So if you've been here, you know, haven't been here for 4 or 5 years, certainly a lot has changed for you since you were here the last time. A lot has probably changed for your organization, and we know that that's a fact given where we're at with COVID-19 response and our quote-unquote new normal. A ton has changed in technology in the last 4 years, and again, even in the last 2 months, as we all figure out what do we need to do to enable all of our employees to work from home? What do we need to do to continue to reach our supporters or our clients while we're working from home? How do we continue to do service delivery? So really a lot has changed for all of us. So even though many of you have been here before, think through what's even, you know, in spite of COVID-19, what's changed for you over the last 4 or 5 years? Have you changed roles? How have you developed as a leader? What's changed for your org? How have you grown and shifted your services? How have your strategic plans changed? And we'll look a little bit more about what's changed in technology as well. And I would also invite, for those of you that have been here before, feel free as we go, or even right now, take a moment and share in the chat window a lesson learned or an idea that you're bringing into this round of tech planning that you learned from the last time you participated. What's one thing you'll do differently, or one thing that worked really well the last time you did this, a lesson learned that you're bringing to this moment of technology planning. And if you've got something in mind or something that you've been thinking about in the early stages here, feel free to chat that in and share your advice with the folks that maybe are new to the program, or that we can all just keep in mind as we engage in a strategic technology planning process in what we know is an unprecedented time. Just a couple of other thoughts that I want to share on that. Again, we know this is an unprecedented time, and it may be a difficult time to focus on technology, to find extra time to do a technology plan, to get on some kind of a virtual meeting with your tech team, to meet with Feza and Mike to move this forward. But we also know, as Amy mentioned, how critical technology is at a time like this. It's what's enabling you all to continue to work and be productive from home, even though we're all on stay-at-home orders. It's what's enabling you to continue delivering on your mission in a really critical and important time. And for some of you, when you're being called upon to do more for maybe the vulnerable communities or populations that you serve. And we know that technology is critical to continuing to deliver those services and also at a time when funding is going to become really uncertain because events, fundraising events, galas, performances are being canceled. Volunteers maybe aren't showing up. So technology is also going to be critical to your ability to continue to keep your supporters engaged and to enable critical fundraising. So yes, this is an unprecedented time, and you're all making it work, and you're working harder and in different conditions than before. And the more that we can get technology working for you, the more that we can make sure that you've optimized, hopefully the more that also enables your survival and your thriving in a really difficult time. So again, thanks for being here and for making time for this in what's a really unusual time. Technology really matters right now. Many of you talked about this in your applications to the program, which I know that you completed before really COVID was as big of a factor as it is now. And you talked about the ways that you thought technology could help you, including for many of you talking about how it could make you more efficient and productive. It could and it should. And I know many of you are thinking about what else you can do to ensure technology is enabling your work this way. But we also know that it can do so much more than that. And we want to make sure that it continues to do so. And so many of you in your application started thinking beyond just efficiency, beyond just, well, if we're more efficient, we'll have more time to do the other things. Yes, that's true. But I want to encourage you during this program, while you have this moment to think big about technology and you have the great advice of Feza and Mike, to really think beyond just efficiency to how technology can help you optimize your operations, yes, but also empower your people and your staff, your volunteers, people to do peer-to-peer fundraising, perhaps. Really thinking about how technology can help equip people to continue to be successful and maybe not be super frustrated during this time. So thinking about how technology and training and the right tools can really empower your people, both your staff inside the organization or volunteers and supporters outside of the organization. Also thinking about how you can use it to continue to engage your stakeholders and community, even when you can't be potentially face-to-face with them the way that you normally are, when you can't do that performance the way you normally might, or that training program the way you normally might, or that fundraising gala, or even just, meet one-on-one with clients the way you normally may. So thinking about how can technology help you continue to engage your stakeholders and community. And last, but certainly not least, thinking about the role of technology in transforming what products you can deliver and how you can deliver those products and services. So I know you're all having to think a lot about that right now. Like, we can't do the gala. How can we still enable the silent auction? We can't do the in-person class happening right here today. How can we use new technology to make sure we're still educating the people that we need to educate, or engaging with our board the way that we need to? So really thinking about how it can help you transform your products and services as well. And as you think through these things, really that bottom section of those quadrants is how technology can transform your organization. And the top is really getting outside of your organization, outside of that firewall, and thinking about how technology can help transform your mission, the beneficiaries you're serving, or the cause that you are trying to support. Now, I realize as I'm saying this, I'm going to hold up my version of the workbook. It's going to look really small because I know I'm really small on your screen right now. But for any of you that saw the note in Betsy's reminder and email and have your participant workbook handy, I am on page 5 of this participant workbook. If you printed it out, you can follow along on page 5. If you haven't printed it out yet and you don't have this handy, you can go to the Nonprofit Support Program website for this course. The URL is in the chat window. It's tinyurl.com/NSPTech2020. Again, that's in the chat window. And a link to the course workbook and these slides is handy right at the top of that webpage. So you can go ahead and open it up and have it open digitally as we're going along in case you want to follow along. But everything that I'm talking about today, the slides, as well as some of the concepts that go a level deeper than the slides, are in that course workbook. We normally would print this out and give it to you, but since we're doing this digitally, we ask maybe you've already done that, and if so, great, thank you. If not, go visit that course website that's in the chat window, and you can open up a digital copy and print it if possible when you have a moment. So thanks everyone for continuing to use the chat to type in those questions or comments as we go. So I just want to talk a little bit about where we're at with technology right now. What are some of the trends that are really important for nonprofits, or the technologies that are really important for nonprofits? I want to cover that to start, and then we'll get more into a little bit of the process for tech planning, reminding you all that have been here before what that process looks like, and for those of you that are new, giving you a quick preview of what the process is that you're going to be engaging in with your team and with Faiza and Mike between now and the next training, and that many of you have already begun. But before we get into those kind of how-to of tech planning, I want to do big picture and think about what's going on with technology for nonprofits right now. So many of you might have heard these terms that we're in the fourth industrial revolution. It's being called the exponential age for technology. We hear the term disruptive technologies thrown around a lot. And this concept called Moore's Law, which is that we get more computing power every day for less money, continues. So more and more we're getting more computing power, whether that's in the cloud or that's in our mobile devices, or it's in our actual laptops or PCs or desktop computers that we use. We're getting more computing power every day for less money. And that's enabling some crazy change in how we can use technology. And the pace of technology change has never been as fast as it is right now. Has never been as fast as it is right now, but also it will never be this slow again. And so we have an opportunity, even as we're kind of thinking of how to enable technology at the basic level at our nonprofits, to think about how can we be tapping into these tools to help us do more with less. And just like the Great Recession, we know that now we're in a time when we are about to enter a recession, possibly a long one. And we're going to need to be thinking, for our survival, how can we do more with less? How can we leverage the power of technology to help us make our staff be able to do things more quickly, more efficiently, more effectively, to increase the quality of service to our clients, even at a time when maybe we're not meeting with them face to face? And one of the things that's really interesting for you all to be thinking about as nonprofit leaders is that these days, it's not so much that we can't afford the technology we need. Moore's Law, that we get more computing power for less money, means that actually the cost of the technology we need is coming down in most cases. The cost of the laptop or the desktop, even the server, is coming down. The cost to have the donor database in the cloud or the financial management software in the cloud is maybe a manageable monthly cost. It's not so much that there are huge capital upfront costs that are a barrier for us now. It's more that we need to make sure we're being strategic about how we adopt and integrate those technologies and those tools, that we invest in training our staff to make the most of those tools, that we manage change and stop using the old way of doing things and use change management to adopt and actually flourish using the new tools, the new software, the new database that we have. So it's not so much that we can't afford them, but that we do really have to be thoughtful, and tech planning is a great time to do it, about how we can empower our staff and our organizations to have the skills as well as the change management and culture to be using these. So we're really seeing three or four main technologies continue to be really relevant for nonprofits. Yes, there are some bleeding edge technologies like artificial intelligence. We're seeing things like podcasting. We're seeing things like blockchain technology, like really cutting edge. But for many of us, we're still focused on four main technologies that are coming together and allowing us to do really good work. And those four technologies are, whoops, let me back up actually. Number one is the cloud, which you see here. So more and more computing power is going to the cloud, and that's enabling us to move processes from our servers in the server closet or from our machines to the cloud, so that even when COVID-19 sent us all home, we ideally all can still be meeting, can still all be accessing the client information or the shared files or the donor database. And that's all being enabled by more computing power and more software for us in the cloud. On top of that, we're seeing lots and lots of people using their mobile devices for everything that they do. We have more access to more data and more computing power to analyze and make sense of that data than we ever have before, to help us not just look at what happened, but what will happen. And of course, social, even while it evolves, we're continuing to see people using lots of social and really, especially now that COVID-19 has sent us all at home, using tools like Facebook or other social media or Zoom to stay in touch, because we are inherently social people. Again, for those of you that are following along in the workbook, I'm on page 6. If you've printed it out and you want to take notes, go ahead and feel free. So just a quick look at each of these trends and how we're seeing them impact the way nonprofits can use them. And then we'll pause and see what questions have come up. And again, if you've got a question or you want to raise something, feel free to raise your hand and we'll take a look at that. I don't see any hands raised now. I do see you using the chat, so thank you for continuing to do that. I'm going to take a quick sip of water. So social use, even though it's changing, it still continues. But what we're seeing as trends that are really important to nonprofits, and I know there are some Marcoms people and some fundraising folks on this call, are that storytelling by video becomes increasingly important on social. And nowadays, paid spend, actually paying to boost your social posts, is becoming critical to get visibility on social. Right now, social is going to be a really important way, again, for you to continue to meet and reach your supporters, your stakeholders, your volunteers, your donors, while they might not be coming to your events or performances or trainings or on-site. So you have to be thinking about how can we creatively use tools like social or Zoom to stay engaged with them. But in order to do that, you might be needing to use some of your budget. Even a little goes a long way to pay for social. Otherwise, your posts may not be getting seen. The other key trend here is that if you're not getting video, you might be getting scrolled right past as people are scrolling through their Twitter or Facebook or Instagram feeds. By 2022, videos will be 82% of all online traffic, and video drives 62% more engagement even than photos. So imagine how much more engagement it's causing than just plain text. So if you are on social, think about how can you tell short stories of the people that you're serving, from your supporters, from your volunteers. How can you have them record a short cell phone video that you can use, just even 30, 60, 90 seconds to help drive engagement and breakthrough on social and tell stories of the impact that you are having in your communities, even amidst this new normal. We're also seeing fundraising. These social tools are continuing to make fundraising easier. So using Instagram or Facebook donation tools might be a key strategy for you when events, in-person events, traditional events can't be happening. So some important trends on social that you might want to think about as you think about tech planning during this time. Mobile also continues to explode. As of November 2016, so 4 years ago at this point, almost 4 years ago, three plus years ago at this point, 95% of American adults, according to the Pew Research Center, had a cell phone. 95%, and that was 3 years ago. Of those, 77% of them had a smartphone. 3 years ago, 77% had a smartphone. So your supporters have a cell phone or a smartphone. Your clients have a cell phone, maybe a smartphone. So thinking about everybody's on mobile all the time. How are you meeting them there? Let's look at a couple of stats. More than 50% of web traffic comes from mobile devices. That doesn't include tablets. So that doesn't include your iPad or your Surface or your Samsung Slate or whatever that's called. 50% is just from our phones. So thinking about how is your website mobile friendly? How are your email communications mobile friendly? Because more than 50% of that traffic that's coming to you is coming from a mobile device, even more if you think about those that are accessing it from a smaller tablet device. 42% of emails are opened on a mobile phone or a tablet. So again, thinking about how are you communicating to your clients, your stakeholders, your supporters at this time? Are they seeing the emails that you're wanting them to see? Also thinking about a different version of mobile, text messages. 82% of text messages are opened and read. 82%. For those of you on the phone that send e-newsletters or emails and are tracking your analytics, chat me what your typical open rate is of your email newsletter. What's your usual open rate on your email newsletter or your email communications that you're sending? For those of you that are in charge of that, go ahead and chat that number in. For many nonprofits, that email open rate is somewhere between 14 and 18%. We've got, there you go. Karen, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Karen is 18%. Suri is 23%. Johanny, 21%. Those are great numbers. Those are honestly great numbers for email open rates, but consider that versus the 82% text message open rate. So thinking about how could you be using text messages as part of your communications mix, not to replace, but to supplement. How could you be delivering services via text message? How could you be having your potential grantees or potential fuel beneficiaries complete an application via text message forms instead of going to a site that might be closed right now? How could we be using text messages to remind new homeowners what they need to be doing 2 weeks after they move into their new home, 1 month after they move into their new home? So thinking about how mobile can really be an important part of our communications during this time, and not just email and websites, but also thinking about text messages, including that this year, the trends show that 90% of smartphone users will have made a mobile payment, like with Google Wallet or Apple Pay or Samsung Pay, and thinking about how you're enabling maybe easy fundraising or easy payment of services using some of those digital wallet programs that we're getting more and more comfortable with as people start to use Venmo and PayPal increasingly in their personal lives. Lastly, let's look at data. The ways we can and are expected to use data continue to evolve. So think about what data do you have and how good is your use of that data? How easily can you get the reports that you need and the information that you need, as some of you said in your applications, to make data-driven decisions about your programs and services? So we're in a world right now where we're being asked to move from an old school annual report that might have looked like that to something that looks more like this. So we're really being asked to move from dense reports with a lot of text and minimal graphics to data-driven, graphic-driven data visualization reports that make it super easy for funders who have a lot of competition for their dollars, or volunteers who have a lot of competition for their time, to see the difference that you're helping them make. This combination of really visual, easy to understand, combined with these stories and anecdotes that really show whose lives you're touching and changing. The ways we can and are expected to use data are evolving also from us being able to talk about what happened to needing to know what's happening right now and what will happen. Super important right now as we enter this uncertain climate, or we're in this uncertain climate, having data dashboards that help us understand what's our run rate, what's happening right now, what will happen if we, don't get our enrollment in our courses or in our digital fundraisers or in our virtual performances up to a certain amount, what will happen? So we really are being asked as nonprofits for our own benefit to not just use data to tell the story of what happens, once a year to our stakeholders, but to use data for us, for our staffs, for our leadership, to be able to make decisions based on that analysis and understand what's happening and what will happen so that we can make really smart decisions with our limited funds, being able to use those predictive analytics. So really, technology used strategically has the potential to change lives. You know, in addition to the cloud, to mobile, to social, to data, we're seeing text messaging being used to make sure that kids know where to find their closest meal when schools are closed. This is from the No Kid Hungry Summer Meal Program, but it's being used now while schools are closed because of COVID to make sure that families that are food unstable or insecure can still text a number and find their closest drop-off sites. Here's an example of web and mapping and mobile being used to help people with disabilities find sites that are truly accessible, a great example of technology changing lives. And one final example of technology doing more than just making us efficient, but really helping us be effective and change the way we deliver programs and services. Here's a text program you can't tell here, but this is something called TalkingPoints.org. It's a nonprofit that is working with educators and schools and teachers to have them text their parents in their native language. So if I'm the teacher and I speak English, I'm texting in English, and it's going to my parent who might speak Spanish. It's going to them and it's automatically translating it into Spanish. And when that parent or guardian texts back in Spanish, it's automatically translating for the teacher back into English using artificial intelligence. Here's a great example of mobile of AI or artificial intelligence translating so that people who now are parents or are schooling from home, are doing homeschooling, can be in contact with their teacher, even if the parent doesn't speak the same language as the teacher and has otherwise not been able to engage very well. So 3 really great examples of how technology, when we have the opportunity to get past break fix, to get out of crisis mode and to push beyond efficiency, how technology can really help you as nonprofits make a difference, change lives, and really change the way that you're delivering services. So I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions. I don't see any questions that have come in or any chats that you want to share about any of the examples that I have shared. I know that was fast, but I just wanted to start by helping us all think big before we get into the practicalities of what is tech planning and how do we do it. So let me pause there and see if anybody has wants to raise their hand or has any questions about these examples or about how technologies or these trends can really empower us as nonprofits. Okay, Julie, I see that you've got your hand raised. I'm going to allow you to talk, and you might need to unmute yourself. I'm going to, oops, I just accidentally muted you again. Sorry, Julie, I gotcha. Okay. Hi, Julie. Thank you.
Hi, Lindsay. Thanks. I'm really interested in the whole data piece of, that you just went through. And I'm curious, I know we at the Alliance are in a really good position because we created a new research department last year. And we have an individual on our team, Jevin, who's involved in this program as well, who is extraordinarily talented in this area and really able to help us get at, creating dashboards and all that stuff. I'm just curious how other organizations who don't have that functionality built into their staff are able to accomplish the same results.
So sorry, I want to restate just to make sure I understood, Julie. So how do people who don't have like a data analyst or a data scientist on staff use their data to really help them make decisions and communicate important information back out?
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky. So just wondering how other people do it.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I would welcome anybody else that's on the line to chat in. How are you doing it? Are you able to harvest the stories, the visualizations, and the decision-making you need from your data to be able to do that if you don't have a data analyst or data scientist on staff? And it's interesting that you raised that question, Julie, because one of the talking points I have to myself as a presenter on that slide is that the nonprofit hires of the future, the nonprofit hires of, I should say today and the future, no longer need to be network administrators or people that keep the IT running in the background. What they really need to be are data analysts or data scientists. So you are ahead of the curve and lucky and in a good spot that you already have that role on hand, because increasingly, because of what's being asked of nonprofits and the amount of data that we have and the way we're expected to use that data, going forward, we as nonprofits do need to think about, can we move the basics to the cloud or to outsource it to an IT service provider and let somebody else manage that? So with what budget we have, we can instead be hiring data analysts and data scientists, which are really like the job skills that we need for the future, not just in the nonprofit sector, but really everybody. That's what young people today are getting trained on to do. So I think you are lucky, and I think if people don't have those skills on staff, they're probably trying to do their best with what they have to maybe, ask for a database admin to help them pull reports, to work with outside vendors to help them build data dashboards that once they're built, they can reference and use to make those decisions. So it may be that they're outsourcing it, but I think it's an important question for you all to be asking yourself at this time. How do you make sure that you have the data analysis and data visualization or data harvesting skills on hand to be able to get the info that you need to make decisions? So let's see what we're seeing in the chat. If anybody else, what organization is Julie from? Julie, do you want to unmute yourself? You'll find it faster than I will on here.
Yep.
To tell us.
We're from the Metro Hartford Alliance.
Metro Hartford Alliance. So that's for Nicole. Actually, that's a great idea. If everybody, if you do unmute to ask questions, or even when you're chatting in, go ahead and share what organization you're from, just so everybody can kind of have that in mind as well. Patty, I see your chat about recommendations for AI translator vendors. I will leave it maybe to see if Mike or Feza have some suggestions they want to chat back to you. Obviously, the Talking Points example that I shared is more for education. There are programs like Google Translate or Microsoft Translate that are built into some of those tools automatically. I will also let Feza or Mike chat in if there are some others for you. But if you're using Microsoft 365 or Office 365 or Google, a lot of those programs actually have AI translation tools built right in. Like when I'm presenting in PowerPoint, I actually can have it caption me in real time. And I believe that that's also able to translate depending on how well it knows your voice and how well it can understand what you're saying in English to translate it into a different language. Okay, for time, I don't see any other hands raised at this time. I'm gonna go ahead and keep us moving. Julie, I think, yep, you've already remuted yourself, so thanks for that, and thanks for your questions. Okay, so let's dive into, I will talk about that. Let's dive into today's agenda. So I went ahead and just dove right into why technology matters and tried to share that before we got into the how-to and the practicalities. We're gonna spend the rest of our time talking about the what, why, and how of tech planning, sharing with you some resources to help. We'll focus a bit on assessment because that's the biggest thing that you need to work on right now between now and day 2 of the training on June 4th. And hopefully give you just enough for you to get going with Feza and Mike and start planning at your organization. You can already hear, and I hope that it's okay for you. Chat me if it's not okay for you. I'm obviously talking really fast because I'm trying to fit 7 hours of content into 90 minutes. Not exactly, we did cut a lot, but I recognize that I'm talking fast for that. If it's absolutely not comprehensible to you, please chat and let me know that so that I can maybe take a breath and slow down a little bit. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going and know that you're all following along and eager to get going. And again, what we're trying to do in the next, 45 minutes is give you just enough so that you can get going with tech planning, know what resources you've got available to you, and kick off or keep this process going with your team and with Mike and Feza at your organization. So a quick overview of what it is that you're going to do. The shorthand, and again, many of you have been here before, tech planning is just like strategic planning, but for technology. And just like strategic planning, you're going to go through some pretty recognizable phases. You're going to start by envisioning the future that you want to be for your organization's use of technology. So you're going to build a tech planning team just like you would a strategic planning team. You're going to build that team, you're going to get grounded in your mission and goals, and you're going to think about if technology were working well for our organization, what would that look like? Hopefully, many of you already have your team built, and much of that team is on today's webinar with you here today. If not, make sure that you take the time and build that team. Maybe, any place from like 4 to 7 people, depending on the size of your organization, 4 to 6 people who can really help keep moving this tech planning process forward, because there's going to be, a good amount of research and work that you need to do. So you want to have some hands to help share and delegate that work. Also, just like strat planning, you want to assess your current state. You can't figure out how to get where you want to be unless you really know where you are. Many of you talked about this in your applications. You need to understand the technology you have, what skills and needs your people have, how your processes are working, if there are policies you need to have in place. So we'll talk a lot about this today. On day 2 or session 2, which will be a webinar as well, we'll talk more about once you've got all those tech project ideas that are informed by envisioning and assess, how the heck do you prioritize them to do the ones that are most important with limited time and limited money. We'll also talk on day 2 about how to actually implement that tech plan. So once it's done, how do you staff it? How do you find or create an effective technology budget? And how do you consider fundraising for it in order that you actually have what you need to implement it? And then, of course, like any good planning process, you monitor and evaluate so that as technology is changing, which it is quickly, as our circumstances are changing, which they are quickly, you can make sure that the things that you've laid out in your plan are still relevant. And most importantly, as you're doing this, you need to keep your mission as an org, your key strategic goals as an organization, and the impact that you want to have as an organization at the center of things, okay? This is not technology for technology's sake. So you always have to be asking, so what? Why does this matter? And how will it help me deliver on my mission or meet what we said are our strategic goals as an organization? As part of your application to the program, many of you shared your strategic plan goals or your annual plan goals. That's really where you should be focused with your technology goals right now, is how can technology help you deliver on what you said you would do in your strategic plan. And if you do this well, tech planning can help you hopefully get out of break-fix mode, get out of, oh my gosh, somebody's computer failed and now we have to buy a new one and we don't know what to buy and we don't have the budget to do it. It can help you make difficult decisions like what donor database should we use and how is it going to integrate with our financial software. It can help you have more realistic and predictable budgeting by understanding, hey, this is what we've said we absolutely need to achieve in the next year, and this is the budget we need to have to do that, and really allow more intentional resourcing for technology. There are many resources to help you do this process. Hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at the course website already. What I'm showing you on your screen now is a screenshot from the course website. Again, this is available at tinyurl.com/NSPTech2020. And along the way, we've got resources for you divvied up by what to do before day 1, what to do before day 2, and what to do after that when you're starting to write the plan. So we've got things like a tech planning template, a sample tech plan. Many of you, we're going to need you to assess your technology, all of you. I shouldn't have said many of you. We have a tool to help you assess your technology called the N10 Tech Accelerate benchmarking assessment. If you haven't already done that, it's something you want to do soon so that you can share your results with Feza and Mike and review your results as an organization to really understand what you have. So again, bookmark this page, favorite it, and make sure that you're aware of all the tools that we have available to you to help you move through this process. Also be thinking about, as you're going through tech planning, how nonprofits adopt technology. Tech planning can help us realize the IT value and drive impact. And we think about the way nonprofits adopt technology as a pyramid. So at that base of the pyramid, you need infrastructure to help you get stable and secure. Many of you mentioned infrastructure in your applications. I'm looking at my notes that I made as I read through all of your applications. At least 3 of you said you need to replace phones, computers, copiers, fax machines. I think 2 or 3 of you are moving to new offices and need to think about what's the infrastructure that you need in place to be stable and secure in that new office. So for many of you, you're in the stage where you need to be thinking about what infrastructure you need to be able to continue to be effective and to operate securely and stably as a nonprofit, particularly as you think about continuing to enable your nonprofits to work successfully from home. What tools do you need to turn on to make sure that nonprofits have access to all of the things that they would have if they were in the office? And so if that's where you are, you're thinking about infrastructure, how can I use technology to make sure that we're stable and secure? Some of you are also thinking about integrating technology. How can you use technology to enhance your service delivery? This is where IT starts to become a business enabler. You're using software to improve service delivery or websites and databases to personalize things. So maybe accepting online grant applications, accepting online applications for fuel, letting people purchase services or sign up for courses online, thanking your donors with personalized emails that you've personalized because you've collected certain information from them. So at this integration level, you're really starting to use technology to personalize and to enhance your ability to deliver services. And at that, so many of you are at that integration level. You're talking about your donor databases, a chamber management system. You're talking about integrating different systems to make them talk to one another so that you can be more effective in the way that you manage your processes. Many of you are talking about enhancing your websites so that they do work a little harder for you. So they're not just a static page, but they're actually letting you exchange goods and services with your stakeholders or your constituents. And at that last level, that's where technology is really driving innovation, where it really helps you add strategic value, where you're changing completely how you serve or who you serve because you're using technology to help enable something new for the sector. So those are examples like the ones I showed you, like the text message program delivery to make sure that kids find access to meals while they're out of school. That Talking Points program that allowed parents or guardians that could never have been involved in their kids' schooling before to use AI to translate and get more involved. So some of you may even be thinking about that top of the pyramid as you go through this technology planning, which is great. So think about, as an organization, where are you on this pyramid? Where are you on the journey? And no judgment. Just know where you are and focus your energy there. It will help you be more successful. For example, if your server is about to fail, if staff are working off their home computers because their work computers have died, or their desktops that are trapped in your office, or they can't update to the latest version of software, know that and focus on infrastructure. If you're struggling with malware or viruses and you can't get past that, know that and focus on infrastructure. You want to make sure that you've got that stable base in place before you try to move up to integration or innovation. So think about, where are you really as an organization? And as you go forward with tech planning, where do you need to focus your energy? If you're up here in integration and thinking about this, great. But what we want people to know is you have to walk before you run. And the analogy I like to use is you don't want to remodel your kitchen up here. You don't want to remodel your kitchen at the top of the pyramid if your basement is flooded. Okay, so I'm going to quickly show you a poll and ask you to pause and think about, where do you find yourself in this pyramid? Let me just find my cursor again and get the poll up. I hope I wasn't sharing poll results that whole time, and if I was, I apologize, and hopefully you moved them off a screen. Okay, I'm going to launch a new poll, and I want you as an individual to tell me, where do you think your organization's use of technology falls in this pyramid? Are you at the innovation level, the infrastructure level, or the integration level? Give you a few more minutes to respond to that poll. Where do you think your organization's use of technology in this pyramid is? Where about half of us have voted. Go ahead and find that poll on one of your screens and tell me where you think you are. Okay, and I'll give you about 5 more seconds to share your response there. And 3, 2, 1. With 70% of precincts voting, let's share the results. You can see this is fantastic. Most of you are at the integration level, even a few of you thinking at the innovation level. Everybody's feeling pretty good about their infrastructure. Maybe you're going to do some infrastructure projects as part of this, but you're not sweating it and you're really trying to think beyond efficiency to that, how does technology make us more effective level in the integration level? So good for you. And keep this in mind as you go through your tech planning so that you can really be thinking about projects that are meeting you where your organization needs to be focusing its energy. So I'm going to stop sharing those results and we'll go ahead and move back to our slide presentation. All right, so stage 1 of technology planning is to envision. What does this mean for you? It means you need to build your tech planning team. And again, many of you have done this already. If you've not, just make sure that you keep these things in mind as you're pulling your tech planning team together. Many of you have already listed 2 or 3 people in your application who are on your tech planning team. Are there others that you need to include? And if so, use that pre-read that we sent you about building your team to help inform how many people, who's on your team, and what considerations you should keep in mind. Again, there's a pre-read that we sent you that walks you through this, or it's in your workbook as well, if you've got that handy, starting on page 16 of your workbook. 15 and 16 of your technology workbook. So consider the right mix of folks on your team and think about how you're going to recruit them to do extra work during what's a busy time. The first thing your team is going to need to do is get grounded in your mission and goals. Remember, I said that tech planning, shouldn't you just be tech for tech planning's sake or tech for tech's sake? We want to make sure that you're really picking tech projects that are grounded in your mission and your key strategic goals. So what did you say your organization's key goals were over the next 1 to 3 years? What are the goals you put in that application from your strat plan? Many of you said things like increase clients served, improve financial stability, diversify our funding sources, even more important now, continue to enhance our organization's reputation or visibility. Start there. Think about those goals and then ask yourself, don't just start listing tech projects. Don't just say, we need this, we need that, we need this. That may be true, but try to think, if these are our strategic goals as an organization, how can technology help us meet those goals? Where can technology intersect with those goals? Is there any place where our current use of technology is no good, NG, and it is getting in the way of our ability to reach those goals? So that you're actually using the chart on page 19 of your workbook to start with those goals and then think about how technology can help you meet them. So for example, we're going to implement a client database so that we reduce time spent on manual paper processes, or we're going to use an online application to make sure that more people can get fuel assistance or more people can apply for grants regardless of where they are. We're going to use our website as a tool to sell or promote services or raise more funds. And we're going to offer tech training to make sure our staff has the skills they need to be effective and to help us retain staff or use the right technology tools to recruit quality staff as well. So I want to encourage you to really start with what are those strategic goals and how can technology help you meet them versus just starting with a laundry list of tech projects, you know, that may not be linked. You want to be able to go back to your board and say, hey, we're doing these projects. We're setting aside this budget. We're spending time on this because these technology projects are directly supporting the goals that we adopted and agreed on as an organization in our strategic plan. So if you're starting with tech projects, slow your roll. Take a step back and ask yourself, how are these tech projects linked to our key goals? And if they're not, why are we doing them? Maybe we're doing them because they're absolutely critical infrastructure projects and we've got to get them out of the way in order to take steps 2 and 3. But, you know, do ask. This will be a good way for you to avoid what I call shiny object syndrome. You know, don't just give iPads to all staff for the sake of it. Why are you giving iPads to all staff? What's that enabling, and how is it connected to your goals? Again, continue to use the Q&A or the chat if you have any questions. Let me pause there just for a minute to see, are there any questions about the Envision stage, about building your team, or about getting grounded in your organization's mission and goals? I see that some questions have been answered. Thanks, Feza and Mike, for continuing to do that. I don't see anything pressing in the chat, but anybody have any questions that they want to raise at this time? Again, if you want to voice it, you also are welcome to raise your hand, and we'll enable you to talk, and you can unmute and raise it by voice as well. And thanks for letting me take a moment to just have a sip of water. I'm going even faster than I do in our in-person training. I hope that those of you that normally come to the in-person training are smiling at that because you know. All right, we're going to dive into phase 2, assessment. So this is critical. And again, this is going to be your big homework assignment between now and day 2. And I'm just going to say thank you in advance because we're putting a lot of this on you because we don't have time to do it in the in-person class right now. We're gonna send you off with this homework. Some of you may have already started this. I'm going to just quickly reference this strategic technology tracker that is also on the course website. Again, I know you can't see this very big because I'm probably a small little corner in your screen, but just for a minute, I want it to be in front of my face. What I'm looking at here is something we call the Strategic Process Overview and Status Tracker. We created this since the last time any of you participated in the course because we know there's a lot for you to do in tech planning. We wanted to try to create a document that would step you through everything you had to do day by day, month by month. So it's what do I have to do before day 1? Hopefully you've done most of those things. Then it's what do you have to do before day 2? So this is homework we're going to go over at the end of today's class if time allows, et cetera, et cetera. And assessment is one of those key things. And so you've done some of it, hopefully, before you came here today, like you maybe started that Tech Accelerate N10 Tech Assessment, and there are instructions in there for you to do that. Maybe you already started to take an inventory of your current machines. That's going to be even more challenging because you're all remote and maybe staff are home with their machines. But these things are critical to have as part of your tech plan because you've got to know where you are, what you have, and how you're doing in order to figure out how are you going to be able to launch that new website. Can you adopt that new donor database or that new chamber management system? So make sure that you're checking off all the things. If you didn't get to them before today, make sure you're checking them off in the time between now and class 2 to use those assessment tools to help you understand where you are. And really our goal here is to help you understand there's things that you already know need to change, right? You put them in your application. You know that your phone system is out of extensions. You know that we can't transfer phone calls. You know that your server is about to die or that you have computers that are about to die. There are many things that you know need to change. The goal of assessment is to help us know what we don't know, to conduct reviews, to use these tools, to ask staff and supporters to reveal other areas that need to be changed that maybe weren't at the top of your mind or at the top of your staff's mind. And also to reference best practices or benchmarks of things that you should be doing to make sure that you're following those as you go. So we're going to have you assess 3 main areas as part of your assessment. Your technology, that's number 1, your people, and your policies and processes. Let's take a quick, closer look at what we mean by each of these. So again, assessing tech. For those of you that are following along, number 1, you'll get a copy of these slides. Number 2, in your workbook, I am starting on page 24 of your workbook, assessing technology. First and foremost, you got to do an inventory. What technology do you have? Computers, copiers, digital cameras owned by the organization. If you own phones that you give to staff, projectors, tablets, write it down, know when you bought it, know when the inventory runs out, know which employee uses it, and know what software is installed, things like how you're connected to the internet, who the admin is for things like your website and the password. You just need to know what tech do you have and have good documentation of that. This is good tech hygiene, we would call it, because in the event of a disaster or the event of we all have to work from home, it's important for us to know what we have and who's got it. So document your computers, take this inventory. You've got to check the box here. It's going to be important. This is also going to be important as you think about moving to the cloud. You need to make sure you know what technology you've got, and is it going to be able to handle the new software that you want to run? Is it going to be able to use that new grants management system that you want to use? And also to just keep track so you know when computers are getting old. Once they're, business standards are 3 years, nonprofit ideal standards are 3 to 5 years. I'm sure that there are many of you out there that have been using the same computer for 7 years, but tracking that so you know when they're going to come due. And my quick little tip is if it's tan, it goes in the can. You can't be using any tan computers anymore. I'm sure that many of you are not. For many of you that are still trying to manage this move from working in an office together to working remotely, make a note of this website, preparerespondserve.org. This is a great site that's been pulled together by a nonprofit management assistance organization in Washington State called 501 Commons, with a nonprofit that is devoted to helping other nonprofits with technology called Tech Impact. 501 Commons and Tech Impact got together, both nonprofits, and they set up this website, and it's meant to be a quick start for you. Many of you have already figured out the remote work because it's now been maybe 2 or 3 weeks since you've all not been able to go into the office. But in case you're still struggling with things or you need some resources, this website is a great jump start for you to think about your technology that you need to enable remote work. Everything from getting laptops refurbished or discounted laptops or computers, to learning more about how you can be using VoIP phone systems during this time, voice over IP phone, to using tools to enable team collaboration and file sharing. So I saw that there was a question earlier about Zoom conferencing and some of the security issues around that. Thanks for that question, Javon. This site would have some great alternatives to Zoom that can enable you to do some of that conferencing and meeting using different tools. There are also a lot of articles out there right now about how to use Zoom like we are today in a much more secure way. The other assessment tool that I've already mentioned a couple of times is the N10 Tech Accelerate Assessment. Raise your hand if you've already done this assessment. How many of you have already gone out to the N10 Tech Accelerate Assessment and have already completed it? Raise your hand if you've already done the N10 Tech Accelerate Assessment. I see 6 of you. Anybody else? 7? Okay, that's fantastic. So a few of you have already done this N10 Tech Accelerate Assessment. That's great. Once you've done it, if you haven't already, get the PDF report of your assessment results and send it to Mike and Feza. This is my results when I did it. I purposely scored lowly. This is going to help you understand where does your organization have a red exclamation point and really need to focus some time. And they're giving you detailed responses for each area to help you understand, like, oh my gosh, I scored low on firewall. What do I need to do? And it gives you suggestions to help you understand what steps do you as an organization need to take to ensure your use of tech for engagement, your tech infrastructure, the way you're leading technology are all in good health. So if you haven't done this, go take this assessment, share the results with Mike and Feza, talk about them as an organization and as a tech team, and take some cues here of what projects might need to be in your list based on these assessment results. A nice little perk, if you do this between now and April 17th, come back to me slides, I need you to move. If you do this between now and April 17th, they will automatically send you an application. They're emailing applications to all organizations that complete an assessment between now and April 17th. They're not big awards, but they are giving out 2 $1,000 grants, 5 $500 grants, and 5 $100 awards. Again, I know that's a small piece of enabling your tech plan, but combined with the money that you're going to get from the NSP program at the Hartford Foundation, you know, if you were to get a $1,000 or a $500 award, that's a tablet or maybe even a laptop for a staff person for you. So finish this before April 17th. You'll get an email to apply for this small grant. Fill it out and let us know if you get one. I'd love to know. It's just a small thing, but every little bit helps now. We also have something to help you assess in addition. So assessment, as you can see, is multifaceted. In addition to these assessments that you're doing, the inventory and the N10 assessment, there's a section in your workbook called the Stable and Secure Benchmarks. 15 benchmarks to make sure that you are using technology stable and securely, because it's not just what you have, it's how well you use what you have. Many of you mentioned cybersecurity in your applications as a primary concern. This list is going to give you a lot of the important things that you need to be doing and thinking about to ensure that you are stable and secure. So read through these 15 benchmarks. Ask yourselves the questions that are there in your workbook about them. If you don't know what they mean, circle them, star them, talk to your IT volunteer, your IT savvy board member, Feza or Mike, your IT staff person about what are we doing in this regard? Are we taking the right steps? How could we mitigate our risk by doing the right things when it comes to this 15 benchmarks? So make sure that you're checking those out as well. In particular, I want to emphasize cybersecurity. A lot of you mentioned it. We're all focused on it. Somebody mentioned the Zoom security issues. The number one thing we need to be doing is training our staff to recognize phishing or other various forms of cyber attack. I'm going to say something important. So I'm going to breathe so you know that I'm about to say something important. Most cyber attacks start with an email to somebody on your team. A phishing email, a catfishing email. There's like 4 different kinds of phishing emails that can come through. Somebody asking you to share important data from your organization. Somebody posing as somebody else from your organization. An email from a tool that you use asking you to go log in from your bank account, to go log in. Most cyber attacks start with an email. So train your staff to recognize those attacks, to understand what to look for, to see that a link might be a fake link, to see that a hyperlink might have a different website below it than the one that you're expecting. So invest in training your staff on cyber attacks. There are cybersecurity tools that help you send these trainings to your staff, put your staff through those trainings, and occasionally send them test emails to see if they'll fall for it. So one of the most important things you can do with cybersecurity is make sure your staff are trained up and know how to do that. So including that training or investing in one of those education programs for cybersecurity might be something you want to think about as a project in your tech plan. Beyond that, some things that you know, but you just have to make sure you're really strict about doing as an organization, as from a policy perspective. Use strong passwords, change them when they're no longer secure, not the same password on everything that you log into. And these last 2 things are super critical. Enable what we call multi-factor authentication wherever you can, particularly when critical data is involved. That means when you log into your donor database in the cloud, it's not just your username and password. You have them send it a code to your phone to make sure that it's really you, or answer another security question to ensure that it's really you. So make sure that you're enabling that second layer of security to help prevent somebody who has stolen your password from logging in as you. So make sure wherever you can, from Amazon to your donor password, to logging into your CMS, your content management system, to change your website, to logging into Office 365 or Google for Nonprofits, enable that second layer. So even if passwords are compromised, somebody has to prove that I am me because I'm typing in that code that you texted to me or sent to my email address, or that security question that you asked me. And make sure as part of this, and Feza and Mike will talk to you more about this, that you have strong up-to-date firewall. That is another first line of defense for your organization against nefarious bad actors that are trying to take advantage of nonprofits who they know don't have the robust security and tech staff of perhaps our bigger corporate colleagues. Assess beyond infrastructure as well. So thinking about how well can we get the data that we need to create the reports that we need? Is all that data something that we can find? How long does it take us to pull it together? How many different systems is it in, or Excel spreadsheets? Do the same thing with your digital communications. How well is technology supporting your communications and donor engagement? How well does your digital presence, from your website to your e-newsletters to your social media presence, how consistently and how well are you able to use those tools to keep people engaged and to professionally represent your nonprofit no matter what? So there's a step in your tracker that has you tell Feza and Mike, as part of your assessment, what data tools are you using and what digital communications tools are you using, so they get a sense of how many different places do these tools live, how many different tools are you using, and how well they're working for you. I see the chat from Yanil. Thank you. If you're operating in the cloud, are you safer from cyber attacks? Generally, the answer is yes, that as nonprofits at this point, cloud providers, normally their business model depends on them being able to be secure and to keep our data and our files secure. So Google, Microsoft, Amazon, a lot of those cloud providers have way more robust cloud tools than we can have, Yanil, in our own server closets. They've got armed guards, they've got barbed wires, they've got secured undisclosed locations, they've got backup in 4 different locations. So the general logic now is that if you're still managing all that data on site at your own nonprofit, a trusted and an established cloud provider who has a good and long-standing reputation normally can afford a higher level of security than you can on site. And especially as Mike just texted, he texted it to all panelists. He needs to text it to all panelists and attendees, Mike. As Mike said, especially if you use multi-factor authentication, because number one, that cloud provider is more secure than we can ever be because they're investing millions of dollars in being secure. Number two, if you enable multi-factor authentication, you're getting the benefit of their secure cloud environment plus your username, password, and code multi-factor authentication. So generally speaking, we're at a stage where cloud providers can help make us more secure so that we're shifting the responsibility of keeping all that data and those files secure from our organization and our IT staff to those big cloud providers. So it's a great question, Yanil, and thanks, Mike, for chatting that to everybody, and it is in fact true. You also want to assess your people. So is IT responsibility in the right places? Do people have access to the right tech support? But you also want to understand what training do your staff need? And do they have the training they need to be stable and secure, but also to be using the tools that they have to make the most of your email newsletter, to make the most of your donor database, to make the most of your chamber management system. So what training do staff need to be as effective? You can give your staff all of the greatest new tools in the world. You can integrate this system with that system. If you don't invest in training staff, you're wasting your investment in those systems. My goodness, I gesticulate a lot, even when I'm leading webinars. So make sure that you're understanding what training the staff have access to. How are you helping them prioritize that training, and what investment in training do you need to make? Otherwise, all these tools you're investing in aren't going to be realizing their full potential because people won't know how to need them. Also during this time, many of you have 20, 27, 16, 63 staff members. Ask each and every one of those staff members what's getting in the way of their use of technology. What access to technology do they need? What training do they need in order for them to be successful? During this time, you might want to do the same thing with your stakeholders. How are they interacting with your organization during this time? What communications do they need or want to be receiving from you? If you're delivering services remotely now, what would they like to see? Could they use a smartphone app, or could they just text you the information they need to apply for a grant or to sign up for a service? What tools do they want to use to take classes or to join performances with your organization? So think about asking all of your staff, but maybe even some of your outside stakeholders, like your board, your key volunteers, your longtime donors. What do they need to stay engaged with your organization? during this time. In your workbook, we've given you a couple of sample questions, a sample staff survey that you really should use for all staff. You could send that out via SurveyMonkey, via Microsoft Forms, via Google Forms, since you're all remote, and ask them those questions that are on that sample survey. Adjust it as you see fit, but we've given you a sample survey on pages 34 and 35 of your workbook. Use it, pop it into SurveyMonkey or Google Forms, send it out and learn more about what your staff feel like those pain points are, and maybe even how your stakeholders, your supporters, your donors, your volunteers want to be interacting with you during this time. So talking to your people is an important part of assessment. One of the organizations in their applications already did this, and it was great to see them include direct quotes from their staff saying, here's what I really need. Here's what's getting in the way. So make sure you're thinking about that. I'm going to skip that poll for right now because I just want to make sure we can get through our core content and open it up maybe to just a few questions as we get close to the end here. The other thing that's really important to think about as you think about your assessment, but particularly about security, is does your organization have the right policies in place to help protect you? Do you have what are called acceptable use policies for your technology? This is especially important as your staff are working from home. What protections are in place to ensure that even though they're working from home on their home Wi-Fi, that they're not exposing important client data, that they're not, leaving their laptop unlocked for somebody else who lives with them to be able to access, that they're not, also downloading, House Party or other apps to stay in touch with people while they're working on a home computer that they're also using to access critical work programs. So ask yourself, do we have the right policies, acceptable use, data security policies, like who can access the data, how secure is it, making sure we're not sharing passwords. And right now we're kind of all working on our own work disruption or business continuity policies. Now's a good time to say, hey, let's not be caught on the back foot. The next time something like this happens, let's make sure we've got these policies, but more importantly, that staff are being trained on them or that they're being incorporated into onboarding or to regular meetings so everybody remembers, hey, this is how we have to handle these things. And make sure that we're training staff about those policies. There's a great resource listed here on your screen, also listed in your workbook if you don't have those policies in place to be able to create them. And the last and final piece of assessment that you'll want to do is thinking about your organizational processes. Again, many of you mentioned this in your applications, trying to streamline and optimize processes. You've talked about double data entry. You've talked about things being entered in different systems. You've talked about systems not talking to one another. So take a moment as part of your assessment of this process and think about what are the most important processes to our organization? What are the things that drive our business? Is it your ability to receive funds and thank donors? Is it your ability to train new volunteers? Is it your ability to sell tickets for performances, be they in person or virtual? Is it your ability to process grants to organizations that request them, or to process fuel grants to individuals that request them? Each of you have different processes that are the main drivers of your organization, from client billing to processing donations. Think about those processes during this time. How are they working for you? Where are there hiccups or giddy-ups or bottlenecks? And take the time to do what we call process mapping or workflow analysis and think about what is the process that we're using and where is it getting stuck? Actually write it down. Use an online tool, like you can even do a PowerPoint and draw the picture of the process like the one I've got here to figure out, hey, this is always taking a long time and information's getting stuck at this process. You can't all be together right now, so we need to think about tools that can help you process map. Maybe the person who owns the process starts by mapping out a process like the one you see here, and then you all get on a virtual call to talk through it and figure out where do we want to eliminate steps, or optimize this process or make sure that communications or that these systems are talking to one another and that things are not siloed in different systems like many of you talked about. So think about what are those key processes for your organization, map them out, figure out where they're inefficient offline before you try to automate them through tech. So if your donor management process or your grant management process or class registration process doesn't feel like it's working well wherever it lives today, fix it as it is today before you try to automate it or move it to a new tool, to a tool for the first time. This process mapping can be a really transformative part, especially if you're at that integration level of the pyramid that we talked about earlier. So what might those processes be for your organization? Go ahead and as you're thinking about it and as I'm moving to the next chat or the next slide, go ahead and chat me in, all of us, to all panelists and attendees. What's a process that you want to analyze as part of this and think about, is it working as you would really like it to? What's a process you're thinking about mapping? Is it payroll? Is it donor acceptance and thank yous? Is it registration? Is it client intake? What's a process that you're trying to optimize as part of your tech planning and you want to assess? Great, Mary and Suri, thank you for sharing those. Recruitment and onboarding, managed client intake and billing. Okay, fantastic. So definitely that's a lot of assessment that I covered in a short amount of time. So if you've got any questions about those pieces of assessment, go ahead and chat them in or put them into the Q&A window right now. I went fast. What questions do you have about how to assess your current state? And in the meantime, I'm seeing some great processes that are going to be analyzed. Javon is going to analyze client intake. Fantastic. Catherine from one of our either Habitat or Mutual Housing Association are going to be looking at the process for apartment applications. Great. I know that was a lot of assessment. So when you're busy, when we get to the other side of this process and this COVID impact, here's some quick questions you can ask yourself as an at-a-glance executive assessment. These are in your books as well, so I'm not going to spend too much time on those, but there is kind of what I call the quick and dirty way for you to assess once you're not doing this really big, hairy assessment that we've just talked about. Okay, so we're in the home stretch. Your homework for day 2 is, as I said, where did it go? In this document called the status tracker. So download the status tracker. Feza and Mike will help remind you of what your homework is. Ideally, you could get through these steps before day 2 of the training. We know that this is crazy times. Of course, you may not get to it all, but if you wanted to try to stay on pace, these are the things we're looking for you to do between now and day 2. You don't have to write these down. You don't have to screenshot this. They are in that status tracker. And again, as you do those calls or meetings with Mike and Feza, those virtual meetings, they'll help remind you of what you're trying to accomplish between now and June 4th. There's the status tracker. I didn't need to hold it up in my camera. I'm showing it to you right there. That's what that document looks like once you have it printed and handy. Check it off or use process notes, maybe put it in your file share so your tech planning team can take a look at it as you go. Sorry, this is the first time I've done this 7 hours of content in 90 minutes, so I certainly did not leave you a whopping amount of time for questions, but we do have a little bit of time. Some of you might have to drop right at the top of the hour. If so, thank you for coming, and I understand. If you don't, I am happy to stay on the line and have you raise your hand. I will unmute you and answer any questions I can live. Go ahead and put any questions in the Q&A, and we'll answer as many as we can before we close the webinar. So let's go ahead and open it up. Again, I know that was fast. I'm leaving a lot for you to do on your own or with Feza and Mike, but what questions can we help answer for you now before we close the webinar and send you to the evaluation, which will pop up on your screen? So go ahead and raise your hands if you have any that you'd like to try to get answered in the next couple of minutes, or put them right in that Q&A window. Thanks, Dana. Yeah, I'll answer this live. The question about that small tech grant again, Dana, that is part of the N10 Tech Accelerate assessment that you're going to be doing. That assessment's in your status tracker. So once you go take the N10 Tech Accelerate assessment as an org, okay, you're going to do one of those assessments per org, not per person. So that's important. Note, the N10 Tech Accelerate assessment at the org level, once you and your colleagues collaborate to complete that assessment and submit it, you will automatically get an application, provided you finish it before April 17th. You'll automatically get an application to apply for one of those small $1,000, $500, $100 grants. So I hope that helps answer your question, Dana, and thanks for sharing it with us.
Great.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Lindsay. I don't see many other questions coming in, and we probably should start to close out here. So I just wanted to say, continue to work with Mike and Feza as you work through the process. Let us know if you have any questions as you go. We miss seeing you all in person, and we hope you stay safe and well. We'll see you on June 4th. And just a thank you to Lindsay for talking us through this morning, and we hope she can go take a big deep breath now. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you all again, and thanks for your grace and patience as we adapted to this new format. Appreciate those nice comments in chat, and also please take a moment to fill out that evaluation, which will open when we close out this webinar. So thank you and good luck, and thanks again to Amy and Betsy and Monica and Feza and Mike and the Hartford Foundation for giving us all this great opportunity to work together. Stay safe and healthy.